Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We're very excited you're here to learn about system administration. My name is Larissa Squires, and I'm the Customer Success Manager here at Kintone. So before we jump into the platform, let's go over some housekeeping. You're likely listening using your computer's speaker system, but if you prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will pop up. If you have questions at any point, you can ask them by typing into the questions pane of the control panel. We'll collect the questions at the end and answer them during the Q&A session. So what will we be covering today? Today we'll be covering platform customization for your logo and login page, security settings, client certificates, audit logs, system mail account, localization, integrations, and our contact us form. So let's jump right in. So first, when you hop into Kintone, you'll click administration. So today we'll be reviewing this system administration portion. So for the administrator navigating from home, click the gear wheel and hop right into users and system administration. So at the beginning, we'll see customize, so let's start there. So with customize, this is where you can change the logo that shows up on the top left of the header bar and the URL that is linked to the logo. So if you see here, I have this little Kintone heart logo. And if you click into this, it'll navigate to our Kintone Help Center. So the image size restrictions are displayed on this page. The logo must be no larger than 800 kilobytes. And then when deciding on a URL, you can choose to link to your company's website or maybe a site that your employees are often accessing. So once you upload your logo and change the URL, just click Save. Now we'll move down to Login Page. So here you can edit what displays on your login page. When you first sign up, the default is a gray background. So this feature allows you to add in a fun image that ties into your company. So your image size can't be larger than 5 megabytes, and the restriction is displayed on this page. You can also change the welcome text. So this is the text that displays above the login box when users are signing in. So the default will be the company name you entered when you signed up for your account. So once you upload your file or change your welcome text, just click Save and those changes will be put into effect. So now we'll go down to security. We'll start with login security. So at the top, autocomplete login name. So when checked, this will auto-populate names when logging in. If you type in a letter and that letter is in 10 of your users' names, then all 10 of those users' names will pop up when you choose. So it will auto-fill that login name. The reason this notice pops up is because it is leaking the login name to anyone who has your subdomain URL. So this could potentially make it easier for someone to access your subdomain, and therefore it is advised, if you choose to use this, that you do configure some type of authentication for your subdomain. Just keep that in mind. So we'll go down to save login name and password. When checked, this will allow the web browser to save your login name and password. Please note the web browser settings do take precedence over this, as noted here. So this setting will only work for those using a specific web browser. So many of your users are probably using Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, and just be aware that they will still be able to save their login name and password in the web browser, even though the setting's disabled here. So automatic login. So select all users to skip the login step to enable automatic login. In the Remember Me for the dropdown, you can select the period of time which the system remembers the user's login information. So it's going to be either 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month. So now next is this password policy section. So self-service change. When checked, this allows your users to change their own password on the change password page in their account settings. I suggest keeping that checked. It makes it a lot easier. Then the administrator won't have to go in and change everyone's password when it's needed. So force password change, when checked, this will force the user to reset their password after their first login or after a password change. So this just means they'll be forced to create their own password instead of keeping the temporary password that was given to them when they logged in initially. So self-service reset. When checked, this will allow users to reset their own password by clicking Forgot Your Password on the login page. If this is unchecked, your users are unable to reset their password on their own. So in this case, they'll need to contact their Kintone administrator to reset the password in the user profile of user administration. So this is now automatically checked by default when you create a subdomain. If it's not set as a default, this just may be because you opened your account prior to the update that made it a default setting. So I believe that was back in 2015, so any newer subdomains shouldn't have an issue with this already being set. The user password minimum length. You'll set this to require a certain password length for your users. And then administrator password minimum length. This will set the requirement for a password length for your administrators. For password complexity, you can choose between none, so they can have whatever kind of password they want, a combination of letters and numbers, or a combination of letters, numbers, and symbols. Login name as password. So when checked, you're allowing your users to use their login name as their password. When unchecked, they can't use their login name as their password. And then you can also set your password reuse limit. So this determines when your users can reuse the password they had prior. You can set this up to 15. So this would mean they can't reuse their first password until their 16th password change. And then we have passwords expire in. So you can force your users to change their password after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180, a year, or unlimited, which would mean never. We'll go down to account lockout. So number of failed attempts before the account is locked out. So you can choose the amount of times there's a failed login before the user is completely locked out. You can choose between 3 and 10 or never lock out. And then account lockout duration, 3, 15, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or never lock them out. So that's just the amount of time they will be locked out. Then we have session settings. So here you can set the session lifetime, which determines how long users can stay logged in without any activity, without being logged out. So the setting up here for the automatic login would take precedence over those session settings if it was checked. And then we have this additional message on login failure. So here you can set up a message that will display when a user enters a password incorrectly. So for me, I have please contact Larissa, your Kintone administrator, at larissa@kintone.com. She will assist in helping you regain access to your account. So this is just super helpful. A lot of people don't know how to log in. If their display name's different, they think it's their emails their login. This just makes it really easy for them to understand who they need to contact next in order to figure out how they can log in. And then down here we have SAML authentication. So when checked, this will enable users to set up the SAML authentication. So now we'll go under security to access control. So here you can configure IP address restriction and basic authentication to enhance your security. So setting these restrictions will block access from public networks to access your domain. It is recommended you configure basic authentication as well as the IP address restrictions. So it's completely up to you and your company, however you guys need your security settings to be set. So basic authentication provides a double authentication by login name and password for access from public networks, and the client certificate authentication can restrict access by device from public networks. So through these IP address restrictions, you can control who has access to Kintone by specifying IP addresses. If you add the IP address of your office network to allow access list, then you can block all other addresses. The basic authentication authenticates users who access the services from restricted IP addresses and provides a double authentication. So first, the basic authentication requires a valid username and password to even access the login page. And then the login page will require the user's login name and password. For added security benefits, you can do the IP address restriction. So let's take a look at how to set this up. So if you click Configure Now, so under this IP restriction, you can choose one of the following. Allow all will allow anyone access to your subdomain. Basic authentication won't be available when this is set. So when this is set, it's not showing the basic authentication option down here. Deny all basic authentication or client certificate authentication is required. This means no one will have access to the login page of your domain without one of these two. And then you can also choose allow specific IP addresses. So this will allow all users using the IP address, they'll be able to access Kintone without basic authentication or client certificate authentication. Those outside of the specified IP address will require one. So let me show you what it looks like when you deny all. So once you click Save, it now allows you to change the username and password for basic authentication. So you can just hit Change and then enter the username and password. So this is what, when basic authentication is set, this is what they'll need to use to even access that login page for your subdomain. So we'll change that. And then if you allow specific IP addresses, you'll need to enter the IP address you want to allow. So the implications of this setting are users can access services only from this network. And you can't set this if you are using mobile devices that are connected to public networks. If you'd like people from public networks to still be allowed to access your domain, you will need to set up the basic authentication or client certificate. And if you're ever trying to set this up and you find you're unable to access your account, you can also change these settings by logging into Kintone Store. So that's store.kintone.com. This is only accessed by the administrator of the subdomain. So no worry if you get locked out. So now we'll go to session settings. So here you can enable and disable clickjack protection. So clickjacking is an attack that makes a user click on a link that takes them to a different site. And you think it's one thing, but it's actually just bait to get you to click. So when clickjack protection is enabled, no one can create the phony links on your domain, and this protects you from entering harmful sites and also information leakages. So we do recommend you always enable the clickjack protection. So just click or unclick and then save for those settings. So next we'll go down to client certificate. So create and download, we'll start taking a look at this. So client certificate authentication is an authentication service that uses the client certificate issued by the system administrator to individual users. Only devices with a client certificate installed can access Kintone from public networks. This is set up. So you can issue or specify different client certificates for each user. Even if a user loses a device with a client certificate installed, you can prevent access to Kintone from the device by just disabling that client certificate. So client certificate will be more secure than the basic authentication. You can purchase this for your users for an additional charge of $5 per user per month. So to use this feature, you must first configure IP restrictions and basic authentication in access control, which we were looking at earlier. You will then have to enable this feature for each user. So to do this, you will edit the user's profile and check the client certificate authentication box, then click Save. And then you can also do this for multiple users in services and users. So here you do client certificate, and then in your user profile, you just have this checked, client certificate authentication. So create and download. This section is where you will create and download each of the user's certificates. So to view users who are authorized to use client certificate, select a department from the list. So we'll take a look at all the users. Okay, so then you'll choose one of these options. So we have valid and expired, unissued, valid, and expired. So it's only showing these 3 people because I only have client certificates enabled for these 3 users. So that's why it's not showing the list of all of the users I have in my platform. So unissued is a list of users who have this feature enabled but do not have the certificate. Valid will show you a list of users who have a valid client certificate, and then expired will show users with an expired client certificate. So to issue, I'll go here, you'll check the name of the person you would like to create a certificate for, and then you'll come down here and you'll click create. If you want to reissue a new certificate, check the box, remove existing certificates before reissuing them. Keeping this box clear will allow the old certificates to still be valid. So if I was to come here and check here, I can create new ones with my old ones still being valid, or if I check this box, it would completely create a new certificate. So after you click create, the user will then move to this valid section to download their certificate, check next to their name, and then you'll click download. You can also choose to create a new certificate. So now we'll go to download permissions. So when checked, you're allowing your users to download their certificate. They can find the certificate under the mobile access tab in their account settings. This tab will only show in the profile settings for users who have a client certificate created for them and available for use. So if they don't have access to even have a client certificate, they will not see this mobile access tab. Now we'll move down to audit logs. So view and download. So you'll use this page to view, filter, and download your audit logs. The system records all actions made by users in Kintone. You can export audit logs up to 6 weeks ago to a CSV file containing up to 100,000 log records. The system archives audit logs older than 6 weeks. Within this top portion, you can filter out the log record you're trying to find. So you can find a detailed list of all the audit log details you can monitor in the Kintone Help Center. So click download log 6 weeks or older to download the archived log records. And then I can show you what this looks like. So this is what it'll look like when you're taking a look at all of your audit logs. You can see the changes that were made, app update, app change deployed. You can see when a record was deleted. And then if you click this little eye icon, it gives you some more details. So the app change deployed, and that was changed by me. So it'll show the user. So now we'll go to settings. So here you can set the retention period of audit logs. You can specify email addresses to receive audit log notifications and specify the format of the exported logs. So there are 2 levels of logs. It's notice and information. The notice level is higher and it's more important to note than something at the information level. So for example, notice level would be a lot of the back-end, this user and system administration changes. So if you change this to send email, you will be instructed to type in 1 or more email addresses separated by line breaks. If you check the box test email, you will get the test email upon saving. You could just change that here, none, and it'll go away. So this will, we'll go down here. So retention period, you can choose the retention period here. You choose 6 weeks or 1 to 10 years. The default is set to 3 years. So this will determine how long an audit log will be saved for. And then lastly, you can choose an export format. This will determine the format when downloaded in the last section, view and download. The default is Excel, but you can also choose CSV in English or Japanese. Move down to system mail account. So this is one step you can come by when you're setting up email notifications for Kintone. You can have emails sent based on app and audit log triggers you have set up. In order to receive the notification, an email must be associated with the user's name and their profile. You can edit the user's profile in departments and users. So here you can just choose built-in or external. So the built-in feature, this is a free mail server installed in Kintone. When you use built-in, the emails will come from no-reply@kintone.com and they will be sent unencrypted. By entering an email and test email, the email address will receive the test email. And if you don't receive the test email, just make sure you check system email failure history. If you choose the external mail account, this allows you to set up email that will come from your own server. If you choose this option, you will need to fill out your system information to set this up, and then just click Save once finished. And then again, you have the option to send a test email. I always think that's a good idea to make sure that you're getting those messages. And then if you don't receive the email, just make sure to check the system email failure history. So let's see, system email failure history. This is going to show you the latest 10 email sending failures within the past month. So if we had failures here, it would show the recipient, the sent date and time, the server settings utilized, and the error code. The server settings utilized column displays the SMTP server, port number, and whether SMTP over SSL is on or off. So the error column will display a link where you can access to view an HTML page with an explanation of the message. So please note, if the sending failure of a test email does not appear on this page, try re-entering the test email address and refreshing the page. So it could just be maybe we had a typo when we were putting in that email address. We'll go down to localization. So here you can set the system time zone and language of your domain. You can choose your time zone from this dropdown. And then our supported languages are Japanese, English, and simplified Chinese. And then once you're done, just click Save. And then we'll hop down to integration. So this is one of the newer features we have in system administration. So here you can enable integrations with third-party services. If enabled, the services can obtain and use data from Kintone. Currently, you can integrate with Microsoft Flow. So to enable, you'll just click this Enable button, and then this Set Allowed Users will pop up, and this is where you'll set the users that are allowed to use this feature. See that, and then check the box next to the users you would like to allow this service to, and then you'd save. That's how you would allow people to use specifically this Microsoft Flow integration. And then lastly, down at the bottom, we have Contact Us. So this is a super easy way for you to contact support from your subdomain. Choose the topic of your question and then fill out this form. This will tell me exactly who it's from and from what subdomain you're asking from. You can also have the option to send an email to support@kintone.com. If you don't feel like coming to this back end of the platform, you can also email a ticket in. And then click Submit. So this concludes our training for system administration. Now it's time for some questions. So we're going to begin answering the questions submitting during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel, and we'll give you a minute to formulate these questions. All right, so let's get into some questions. So first, what is the point of having more than one client certificate? So the importance of being able to add more client certificates is just in case someone gets a hold of a certificate. And in this case, you can create a new one for your user, and then you'll be able to disable the old one. So it's good that you can disable. This is just to make sure if somebody else gets access to a device or gets access to a client certificate, you can disable that, and then they won't have access to your platform. Why would you allow your users to download their certificates? So a user would need to download their certificate in order to access the platform from that specific device. So for example, if somebody wanted to set up the Kintone on their mobile device, they'll need to move that client certificate over to their mobile device so that they can access the platform with that client certificate, if that is required. What is SAML? The Security Assertion Markup Language. That's what SAML stands for. So it's an XML-based open standard data format. So it links the authentication information across several security domains. So if this is used, you can single sign on into Kintone using the user account registered to the company's IDP, so their identity provider. All right, so it looks like that's all the questions we have. So I just want to thank everyone for attending today's live training session. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to support@kintone.com. So you'll receive an email in the next 24 hours with this webinar recording. It will also be up on our YouTube channel, and you can also find it in our System Administration Help article in our Help Center. So on behalf of Kintone, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.